Vishnupadhaya Krishna Preshaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhi Paschatya Desha Tarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Jaya Radha Gokulananda Radha Gokulananda Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Gokulananda Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Can you take me on? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Shashi Mataji, Rudu Mataji, Anuradha Mataji, and anyone else watching. Before we get into the 16th chapter summary, we'll start off with the invocation. It's quite a nice chapter, this one. Quite a practical one. Something that we can see around us in our day-to-day, for sure. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudhirayet Nashtaprayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So, the 15th chapter, we covered quite a nice chapter again. The 15th chapter, we started off with a description of the material world as a upside down banyan tree, and we understood it as a reflection of the spiritual world. So it's not exactly it's impermanent, basically. And when we went through that chapter, we then understood where our real home is. We used the story of like the prodigal son and things like that, and we also understood how material nature inflicts us, how Lord is our maintainer, and we finally came to the conclusion that the relation between the soul and the Lord and how we can love the Lord, etc. And so in this chapter, what we start off with is there's a description of the tree that we've seen last time, but this chapter goes on to describe the fruits of that tree. Those more sweet and more sour fruits on the tree, those in the quality of goodness and those in the quality of passion and ignorance. And so the 16th chapter, entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures, describes something we see very practically in our day-to-day and something that we can learn a lot from. Again, one of the chapters, when you read through this, you'll notice again like how accurate it is in our day-to-day, how we see this so often, and how a lot of us can correct this as well. It's described in every devotee when describing this chapter uses this example, so it would be rude of me not to use it. In the Satya Yuga, the divine and demoniac beings were on different planets. When we have this story of Hiranyaksha or Hiranyakashipu, it was always on a different planet. That was the problem was happening between the demigods and demons at that time. And then in Treta Yuga, we look again, and that time the divine and demoniac beings are on the same planet but now different countries. For example, we take Lord Raman, Ravan, and that example again is India, and not this Sri Lanka, a different Sri Lanka, but still two different countries. And then in Dwapar Yuga, we look again. Now, not only that they're in the same country, but they're in the same family, and it's different members of the same family. We see the Pandavas and Kauravas while this song is being sung. We see that they're in the same family, they're cousins, and yet some of them are divine and some of them are demoniac. And finally, when we come to the age of Kali, we see that divine and demoniac natures exist within the same person. At times we may act in a divine manner, at times we may act in a demoniac manner. And so it's described that when we think of demons and demigods, we often think devatas or demigods, they are so great, they're so like spiritual, auspicious, they're completely different to us, and demons, they're these beings that look hideous with horns on their heads, or they are very ferocious and gruesome to look at. But that's actually not what a demon and a demigod is. Someone who acts divine is a demigod, and one who acts demoniac is a demon. And that's a simple division that's given by the Bhagavad Gita. And so when we get into this chapter, we see the first three verses that are put together. These three verses are very nice verses to learn. You will see, for those of you who are in some of the other Gita classes, you will see a massive overlap between, we'll get into that again. So the 16th chapter starts off. We'll recite the verses and the translation. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Abhayam sattva samshuddhir jnana yoga vyavastiti dhanam damascha yajnascha svadhyayastapārjvam ahimsa satyam akrodas tyagah shantira paishunam daya bhuteshvalo luptvam madhavam hira chafalam tejakshamadhriti shaucham madroho nati manita bhavanti sampadam devim abhijatasya bharata. So the first three verses Lord Krishna speaks, and he speaks on those divine qualities. We'll focus on some of them now. Altogether, there are 26 divine qualities. Daivim sampadam daivim, he says at the end. Bhavanti sampadam daivim abhijatasya bharata. These are those divine qualities. What are they? Fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharata, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. So these qualities are similar to those we have seen now in the 12th chapter, from the last section, 13 to 20. And we've also seen these qualities in the 13th chapter, from verses 8 to 12. And so these same qualities, those divine devotional qualities, one of the practices we always say, as we are becoming more spiritual, more Krishna conscious, we should measure ourselves against these indicators on how well we're improving, how clean are we. We always say cleanliness is next to godliness. Well, how clean are we? How organized are we keeping? How simple are we? Are we making our life too complicated for ourselves? How angry do we get? Or how envious can we get? So we have to measure against these indicators, and try and keep those demoniac qualities less and almost nullify them as we go through the process, and overall as well for the devotees, increasing these divine qualities. So these are the sampadam devim, the divine qualities. Now, some of them I wanted to mention. The first one mentioned in this chapter, Lord Krishna begins with abhayam. Abhayam means fearlessness. And so this might seem like, often when we look at these qualities, when we're reading through them, people might think they're quite unrealistic. They're quite sort of theoretical, right? Fearlessness. Well, yes, if you get to that stage, of course, but that's not practical nowadays. How are we going to keep fearless in our day-to-day? And so one of the things that's really important to say is that, how is one fearless? One's fearless when they are dependent on the Lord. When they have goptritve, rakshasyati vishvaso goptritve varanam tata. Rakshasyati vishvaso. When one has that dependence on the Lord, that faith that He will take care of me, He will protect me, then one is able to become naturally fearless. So this is one of the qualities of the Lord, because they simply depend on the Lord. More qualities are given. Sattva samshuddhir, pure consciousness. They're not thinking about nonsensical activities. They're not thinking about detrimental activities. They're thinking about activities that uplift themselves and those around them. And then finally, you have things like dhanam, they're very charitable people in general. They carry out that arjavam. They're very simple. They're not complicated. They're very straightforward, no duplicity. And so like this, so many nice qualities are given. Other ones that I'd like to mention, ahimsa, non-violence. Although we'll see that Lord Krishna is propagating, he's asking Arjuna to kill here, but he clearly states that non-violence is an important trait. The reason why some people may think, oh, well, this is clearly wrong. Now, you're asking someone to engage in war. How can this make any sense? Well, Lord Krishna is clearly stating actually non-violence is a divine quality. And satyam, truthfulness, not lying for one's personal benefit. There are, of course, times you have to lie to keep other people safe. For example, if a murderer comes to your door and says, where is XYZ, I need to kill them, then at that time, lying is perfectly justifiable. As we've done in the Mahabharata series ages ago, the principles of dharma, they're quite dynamic. They're not static. So even when Lord Krishna says satyam, he doesn't mean that then be truthful in that situation. But it's rather, we have to put a little bit of our intelligence there to not be, nonsensical about it. Again, akrodas, freedom from anger, not unnecessarily becoming angry. Why waste our anger? Generally, 99.9% of times, there is no point in lying, being angry, or being violent. This is what the general principle is. A lot of people will like to point out technicalities, but those are the underlying points. And so, Although this chapter is entitled Divine and Demoniac, only those 3 verses describe those divine qualities, what divinity is. And then the rest of the chapter, Lord Krishna speaks on the demoniac. It's actually described in the Gita Mahatmya by Lord Shiva to Mother Parvati that there's one terrible elephant that's wild and it's running throughout the city causing great havoc. And so everyone is very scared because it's a maddened elephant, and an elephant's power is much greater than ours. So we have no hope to protect ourselves. And so in that way, everyone is running away from this elephant, and they are all so fearful. They don't know what to do. And it's described that one saintly person comes at that time. He walks up to the elephant and he recites these 3 verses describing the qualities of the divine people. And simply by that recitation, by those indicators, by those the natural saintliness of that person and these divine qualities that he's mentioned, the elephant becomes stable. And it's the important point that when we develop these qualities, when we also are able to develop these, not only do we become stable, but those around us also notice that change, and they will experience that change as well. And so we're actually doing for the greater good of society. If we improve ourselves, we're improving those around us as well. This is for the greater good of society. So this is a plus. And then now we will go on to the more materialistic qualities. Sorry, I forgot to mention, by the way, verses 1 to 7 are these divine and demoniac qualities. So in verse 4, now we start hearing about those demoniac qualities. And those qualities are characterized by ignorance and passion. Whereas those divine qualities, although they might be to some extent material, they are naturally liberating in themselves. They naturally uplift one. Having these qualities naturally uplifts one. Whereas having demoniac qualities will naturally push people down to lower species of life, etc., as we will say. Dambo darpo bimanascha krodha paryushamevacha ajnanam chabijatasya partha sampadamasurim. Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. Pride, dambo. First thing that Lord Krishna mentions is pride. Now, the demoniac quality of pride is one of those things. It's described as sometimes in Vedic literature, described as an intoxicant. In Krishna consciousness, we say 4 regulative principles, and one of them is no intoxicants. And so pride is also an intoxicant. It makes us feel like we are so great. It makes us feel like we're so amazing, when in reality we're not so great, so powerful. We don't fulfill what we are actually thinking of ourselves. We are lying to ourselves. That's what pride is. And so that pride leads to a fall, of course. The pride is one of the qualities that we should try and get rid of. The demoniac qualities are characterized by pride, and as we'll see later, lust. Dharpa, arrogance. We're thinking, oh, look at me. Look at how religious I am. Look at how great my education is. Look at how much money I have. This all comes under arrogance. Even this is one of the things we learn actually is materialistic people love religion because they want to make a show of themselves. Oh, look at me. I do so much charity. I'm so great for the poor. Are we doing that to help them, or are we doing that to fulfill our own sense gratification there? So in that case also, these materialistic religion, of course, true religion is different, but materialistic people will take to that to show their arrogance. There's conceit. We want to be appreciated and seen greatly by others. Anger, krodha, paryusham, very harsh words, harshness of speaking. Now, harshness of speaking actually generally indicates a sign of ungratefulness. When we don't have gratitude for others, we naturally speak more harsh and less pleasant. Priyavakya pradhanena sarve tushyanti jantavaha. By speaking nice words, everyone becomes happy. But that doesn't mean you speak not those which are not true. The phrase is satyam bhuyam priyam bhuyam. Speak the truth and speak it sweetly. This is what we should try and imbibe in our life. There are only certain times where we might have to speak the sweet things, even when they're not true, but very, very small % of times while that will happen. And that's in very emotional times. And sometimes it's important that we have to speak the true things, even though they're not sweet. And those are in logical times, very matters of logic. We have to speak the truth. But 99% of the time, we should speak the truth and keep it sweet. So these are the demoniac qualities. And what do the different qualities endure? Or what do these different qualities result in? Daivi sampad vimokshaya. The transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation. Nibandhaya surimata. whereas the demoniac qualities make for further bondage. Although these qualities are material, these divine qualities, they're still in the mode of goodness, which is not transcendental in itself. They naturally make us transcendental. So they result in liberation. The demoniac qualities, they result in bondage. And so therefore, anyone with sanity, any sort of level of sanity, will then choose the divine qualities over the demoniac. And then to clarify what Arjun's doubt is, because now he's thinking, well, if you just said that I should not fight, then what is my position, because I want to fight now? He says, Ma shusha sampadam devi mabhijatosi pandava. Because the context of this is the war. Krishna says, don't worry, you are of the divine nature, my dear son of Pritha, my dear Pandava. And so then we realize that the division is there between these two qualities. And the question may come, how can we be more sincere? How can we be more clean? How can we be more loving? How can we be more fearless? How does that happen? And it's the same way. How does one learn to become better? For example, I'm studying economics. How does one become better at economics? By spending time with those who are good at economics. How does one become better? How does one become a drunkard? How does one take to drugs? By spending time with those who are drinking and those who are taking to drugs. How does one develop these qualities? It's by spending time with those devotees who are developing these qualities as well. And so the importance is there of then association. Whoever we spend our time with, whoever we associate with, whoever we are influenced by, they will make it much easier for us. And so therefore, although we may try and avoid others a lot of times in spirituality, the real process is actually through connecting with others, not through detachment with others. It's through connecting with those devotees. They will take us to the Lord, for they have captured the Lord in the loving ropes of their heart. Okay, now we go into the next section, from verses 7 to 20-ish. This section deals with, in detail, the demoniac qualities, because this is the important thing. The importance of this chapter is the practicality of where we see those demoniac qualities and what is the result of them. So it speaks in depth about those demoniac qualities. First thing, in verse 7, we see pravrittim cha nivrittim cha. So if anyone's noting down verses, by the way, important verses to note down 1, 2, and 3, and finally verse 7 and 8. Pravrittim cha nivrittim cha. Pravrittim cha, they do not know what is the right thing to do. And nivrittim cha, they don't know what not to do. What to do and what not to do, they don't know this. Janana vidurasura. They don't have those who are demoniac, they don't know what to do. And what qualities they also don't have? Na shaucham, na pichacharo, na satyam. They are not clean, they are unclean. They don't have proper behavior. They don't have good acharaha. They don't have it. And na satyam, they're also always lying. These are the qualities. So when we notice these qualities within us, we should try and remove them. Is one of the main principles that we learn from here. Further, to understand the demoniac nature, we should understand that those who are demoniac, as we said earlier, don't appear with their horns. And so it's important that we realize actually some materialistic people in the name of religion will carry out materialistic desires. They will say my religion versus your religion. That's again material. My religion is so great. My, race, my background, my ethnicity is so great. Yours is not. Yours is nonsensical. That's also not religion. Real religion means to know God and to love him. It's actually a very nice story is given. A moral story which often spoke in this regard. The jackal and the vulture. One boy has sadly passed away in this story. And the boy is about to get cremated. And so everyone's there at this funeral, all the relatives, all the family members. And unfortunately, they're talking, how distressing it is to see that the boy has gone. They're all speaking sweet words. At that time, a jackal comes there. And the jackal says, he also speaks very nicely. Oh, this boy was so good. He was so intelligent. He was so charming. He was so loving. He was so kind. He was so moral. And so the jackal speaks all of these nice words of kindness. And then says, my dear friends and relatives, you are all so loving that you've come. I think you should take a break. And I think you should relax for now. Go and spend time with each other. And just come and do the funeral tomorrow instead. And so the relatives are about to leave then. So why is the jackal saying like this? Does the jackal actually think that the boy is kind? No. The jackal does not care about the boy nor the family members. But the jackal wants Whatever I can do, I want for my sense gratification. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send them away. If they cremate the body, I can't eat the ashes, but I can eat the body. And so the jackal is using this logic, using this morality to try and fulfill their own desire. Right? This is what the jackal does. And the vulture comes then. And the vulture says, no. This body is, this body is material. The soul is the real spiritual essence. So this body has died, meaning that the soul has left, but there's no change in the body. The person you were loving was the soul anyway. And so in the name of the soul and body concept, the vulture says, don't worry, I will eat the body. Because there's no point. There's no point in respecting the body. So this is twisting religion. This is fake religion. This is not real religion. Real religion is mentioned by Srimad Bhagavatam, dharma projita kaitavotra paramaha. By rejecting the materialistic dharma. Because real religion is not material. Real religion is spiritual, paradharma. That's why Krishna says as well in Bhagavad Gita, sarva dharman parityajya. Rejecting all varieties of religion, not irreligion, rejecting religion, varieties of religion, simply surrender. And so, when we understand that simply by wearing a tilak and putting on a kirtan, dhoti, or a sari, one doesn't become a great devotee. It's by devotion that one becomes a devotee. Important point to put across. Because the demoniac people, they use their philosophy sometimes to twist it and get their own sense gratification. That's not what a devotee does. That's still demoniac. Very important to note down. Okay, 8th verse, very nice. Asatyam apratishtamte. Please note down, 8th verse is another verse to memorize. Asatyam apratishtamte jagat ahuranishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama haitukam. What do they think? They think this world is asatyam. It's false. It's not real. Apratishtam. It doesn't have any foundation for its existence. Jagat ahur anishwaram. There is no Ishvara. There is no God. It's no God in control in this world. Aparaspara sambhutam. It's come for some reason without any cause. And kimanyat kama hetukam. Actually, the real urge and the real purpose of this life is sex desire. Passing on the genes, engaging in those lusty activities. Kama hetukam. These sex desire is what is driving the world now. This is what these demoniac people say. So, they conclude that the world is, Prabhupada has put very nicely, a phantasmagoria. Like a dream-like. There's no cause, there's no effect, there's no control, there's no purpose, everything's fake. This is what these demoniac people say. And so with that, what do? They try and enjoy themselves. Because there's no one else to enjoy, I should enjoy. And it's only for their lusty desires. That's what they think. It's only for my lust. I don't need to listen to anyone. There's no rules that I should follow. The whole of this is a nonsense. It's all fake anyway. So therefore, there's no point in me enjoying. This is what these demoniac people think. But this is not the reality of the situation. And so they are then clearly being affected by the modes of ignorance and passion in this regard. And so when we look at people, those Vedic demons we always talk about, like Ravan, there's no other God. It's not important for me. I should enjoy this world. This is what this purpose is for. It's for me to enjoy my desires, my lusty desires. Doesn't matter at anyone's expense. It does not matter. Like this, they think. There's no cause. There's no effect. There's nothing. And so their whole perspective is like this. This is the way they look at the world. Asatyam and apratishtam. Asatyam, unreal. It's not real. It's not true. Apratishtam, without a foundation. And then anishwaram, there is no God. That's what they say. And so it's only what? Kama haitukam. The world is only here for lusty desires, they think. And then to further that, in the 9th verse, following such conclusions, the demoniac who are lost themselves, who have no intelligence, engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world. Etam drishtim avatstabhya. By taking this perspective, nashta atmana alpa buddhaya. They have completely lost themselves because they have no intelligence. Prabhavanti ugra karmanaha. So what do? They engage in ugra karma, nonsensical, painful activities. And what do they think? Kshayaya jagato ahitaha. They think I'm doing so well, but actually this results in destruction of the world. And I remember one time, many years ago, I say many years ago as if I'm an old person. I'm only 16. Only a couple of years ago, I remember I had to do a project for climate change in geography. And that day, that Friday, we went to temple. And at that time, one devotee from Scotland was coming and he was talking about this verse. And I remember thinking this is the reality of the situation, especially when we see things like modern day climate change, for example. What is that? That is, it does not matter. The economy is good, it's growing, our technology is advancing. It does not matter that we are ruining the planet. It does not matter how many species we affect. It doesn't matter. Our enjoyment is happening. And so that really hit me that day. That is ukra karma. So many things we do. Slaughterhouses. Oh, it's fine, it helps the economy boost, you have more jobs, you're using your resources well. It's not the real way it works. Simply put, I am sanitizing my speech I am causing a massacre and sanitizing my speech by calling it, oh, it's okay, it's fine, it's for the good of society. I can eat it, it's fine. That's what a slaughterhouse is, putting other species in distress for the sake of my pleasure. And so like this, we engage in so many ugra karma activities in the material world. And those demoniac people, you will be able to see so many people in your own lives, you will know how they're engaging in activities for the simple what? For destruction. That will only lead to destruction. This is a complete nonsense. Because for us, there is no God. For us, there is nothing. So therefore, we will engage in complete nonsense. Even if there is no God, there is at least some understanding of there should be morality. But these demoniac people have no understanding of that and they use it to their enjoyment. Actually, it's described in one verse that certain atheists will be better than these fake religious people. Some fake religious people, they tell everyone there is a God. They tell everyone this world is not meant for your sense gratification, but then they take your money. They don't believe there is a God, but they tell people that there is a God. Or they will themselves claim to be God. If you go to India today, you will not find a difficulty finding someone claiming to be God on any street. This is possible. And so actually, one should cultivate the mode of goodness, because otherwise we're going to simply engage in this ugra karma activity. Like Ravan did. Like Ravan, when he knew all the Vedic literature, he knew there is a God, but he doesn't really think that that's true. And simply what does he do? Oh, for my lusty activity, I'll kidnap someone else's wife. This is what demoniac mentality is. And so even though we talk about things like that in the Vedic society, these materialistic conventions, which we often consider the self of advancement of human civilization, are actually making us more violent, more cruel to other beings, more cruel to animals. And we are not actually helping others by doing this. This is an ugra karma. This is greed. This is lust. And so what do these people do? They take shelter of the lusty desires, as described in the 10th verse. Taking shelter of insatiable lust and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige, the demoniac are always sworn to unclean work, attracted by the impermanent. So for this material world, for some material temporary sense gratification, they carry out their activities. They have so many desires, they can't stop. They're having further and further desires to enjoy. This is what motivates them. And they think they are very advanced, but they are not actually advanced. That's why sometimes it's described that humility is honesty and pride is dishonesty. Pride is, I think I am so great, but I'm actually not that great. So I'm lying to myself. That's what I'm doing when I'm proud. And so that's why this quality of pride should be pridefulness, or being so, thinking so highly of ourselves unnecessarily and coming to terms with the reality is so important. And so finally, then we look in the 11th verse, 11th and 12th verse. Very nice verse. They believe that to gratify their senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, until the end of their life, their anxiety is immeasurable, bound by a network of hundreds and thousands of desires, and absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. First thing, chinta maparimeyamcha. They always constantly have fears and anxieties, up till the point of death. Pralayantam, up till the point of death. They're always having these anxieties and fears. Actually, one story is there of a sage with a golden bangle. The sage had a golden bangle, and he took off the bangle and he said, I will give this to the poorest person I know. I'll give this to the poorest person. Whoever is the poorest person, come and claim this bangle for yourself. And so many people came and they said, oh, I'm so poor. Please give me this. I'm so poor. Look at me. And he didn't give. He said, no, you're not the poorest person. And then one day the king is passing through with his entourage. Now the king hears the sage say, I'm going to give this bangle to the poorest person. The king thinks, oh, that's fine. I'm not going to. The sage comes and offers him the bangle. And the king becomes shocked. It looks like we've had a disconnection there. Is everything still working?
Yeah.
Okay, just check. Okay, it appears that's still working. So the king takes the bangle, and the sage says, the king says, why have you given it to me? I'm not the poorest person. And the sage said, yes, you are. Because you are the least satisfied with what you have. And so actually, being poor does not mean, being poor in the state of Krishna consciousness, does not mean how much money one has or the lack of how much money one has, but rather it means how much you think a want is a necessity. How much we think that things we don't need, we do need. That is the real sign of poverty. So that's what the demoniac people, they often engage in this mode of passion, right? And so because of the mode of passion, they have so many desires. They're always postponing their happiness to later on. Always saying, if I had this, I will be happy. But they will never be happy with what they have now. Being happy with what we have now does not mean we don't improve, but rather it means that we are always continuously happy, even throughout the improvements. And what they do is they improve. Why? Because I want to be happy. When they get the thing, they don't become happy. So this is one of the qualities of the mode of passion in particular. Kamopa bhoga paramaha. The sense gratification is the highest goal of life, is what they think. And so they become entangled in the way of the material world. And what do they do to fulfill all these desires they have? Anya yenartha sanshayam. Sanshayam, sorry. Anyanenartha. Anyana, illegally. In bad manners, in bad ways they will accumulate wealth. So illegally they will get wealth to fulfill their desires. This is why people will carry out so many crimes, financially, laundering, all these scammers that are working now through trying to scam people through having like some sort of pop-up ad or a virus, the Amazon scam, all of these things. Why is this happening? Illegally, to source money. Why? Fulfilling my own desires, fulfilling my sense gratification, fulfilling my lust, my anger, my greed. That's all it's all for. And so it's a very interesting thing that when we notice it, this is not, demoniac people originally, when you may have started the class, you might have thought it's completely different, but now you might see it in the people around you itself. These are the demoniac qualities that make one a demon. And so now that they've got the money, now that they've illegally, anya yenartha sanchayam, now that they've illegally accumulated wealth, and now they've illegally made money, what do they think? Verses 13 to 15. Very interesting. Idam madhyamaya labdam mimam prapse manoratam idam mashtidam api me bhavishyati punardhanam. So much wealth I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and I will increase it in the future. He is my enemy, and I've killed him, and my other enemies I will... Oh, sorry. Now I've gone to the next one. Bhavishyati punardhanam. Then, the second part. Asho maya hatas shatrur hanishye chaparanapi. He is my enemy, I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. Ishwaroham maham bogi siddhoham balavan sukhi. Ishwaroham, I am the God. I am the enjoyer. I am the Lord. Ishwaroham. Aham bogi, I am the enjoyer. Siddhoham, I am perfect. Balavan sukhi, I'm the strongest. Adjo bijanavan asmi. There is no one so powerful as I am. Ko anyosti sadrashomaya. Yakshe dashyami modisha itya jnana vimohita. There's no one so powerful and happy as I am. I am the richest man with great relatives. I'll perform great sacrifices, I'll give some money to charity, and in this way I shall rejoice. And ajnana vimohita. They are deluded by their mode of ignorance. So when they get this wealth, when they get this money, this acts as an intoxicant. This pride, as we mentioned earlier, acts as the intoxicant, and this is how they start thinking. They start thinking of how great I am, how great I will be, and look at all my plans that I have. And so in this way, they put themselves in a position to only enjoy sense gratification. This is one of the things that main demoniac quality is, simply engaging in sense gratification. Not thinking what is for the better of society, only what's better for me and I. That's it. Not even we. At least there's not some selfish sort of gain, like combined selfishness, at least my group. That's not even there sometimes. All of this sense gratification, whether it be collective, as a group, I want my group to win, or individual, I want just me to win. All of this overall comes in this quality of the asuri nature, the demoniac nature, sorry. And then now verse 16. They become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment, and they end up falling down into the hell. Patanti narake shucha. So this is what happens to them. They end up becoming so much gratified by kama bhogeshu, by sense gratification, and it leads to their fall down. Okay, so let's just go through that chain again. They develop these qualities to fulfill their desires. They illegally accumulate wealth. They think that there is no God, so this is what leads to their desires. And then to fulfill those desires, they always illegally source this wealth and carry out their own sense gratification. And when they do that, they think they are so great, but actually this leads to their greatest downfall. Actually, one of the words is there in this verse, moha jala samavita. Jala means a network. It actually means like a fishing net. Jala. You know, like a fishing net. So when someone goes fishing, they throw out a net. And then when one gets back that net, all these fish are stuck inside. That's what happens there. There's no way to come out once you get stuck in this sort of loop. And then 17 and 18, we'll see how they use their fake religion to get their ways done. Atma sambhavita stabdha dhanamana madanvita yajante nama yagneste dambena vidipurvakam. Self-complacent, always impudent, deluded by wealth and false prestige. They proudly perform sacrifices in name only, without following any rules or regulations. They just follow whatever they want, just for the sake of, look at me, I'm so religious. I've done this, this, and that. You need to see this. Like that, they carry out their sacrifices. And then further to understand this, not only are they hypocritical, they engage in religion only for their nonsense. They take the dress of renounced law of life and then do so many nonsensical activities in that. They reject avidipurvakam. They reject all the rules and regulations. This is just ignorance. This is not spirituality. This is materialistic only. Ahankaram bhalam darpam kamam krodam cha samshrita mamatma paradeheshu pravishchanto vyasuyaka. Bewildered by false ego, ahankaram, bhalam, strength, dharpam, pride, kamam, lust, krodam, anger. And then they also taking shelter, and they become envious, by the way, of those who respect the Supreme Lord. A very important quality. One of the qualities of demoniac people is as soon as someone tries to explain the real religious activity, to say that Lord is Supreme Personality, all these material things don't matter, they become greatly envious of them, like Hiranyakashipu. As soon as any spiritual activity was carried out, he became so envious. He ordered, stop all these worships that the Brahmanas are doing, all these respect to cows. Don't do any of this. Carry out havoc in the universe. They become so envious of the Lord and his devotees. And so in this way, they try and blaspheme the real religion after accepting the fake religion. This is the hypocrisy that they have. When I'm saying fake religion, I want to clarify again, this is not one religion versus another religion. This is materialistic versus spiritual. Fake religion is simply, how can I fulfill my own desires? How can I fulfill my wants? How can I fulfill my needs? Real religion is to know God and to love him. This can be, any religion will lead to this point. Because one of the things Prabhupada has very nicely mentioned is that whether one is a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, Jew, does not matter. When one takes the real religious practice, they will be able to make advancement. They will come to the mode of goodness. But when one takes a fake religious practice, they won't be able to come to the mode of goodness. And that mode of goodness will naturally allow them to progress even further to Shuddha Sattva. But any religion will bring one to at least the stage of the mode of goodness, the true religion. And so these people now who have carried out so many whimsical activities just to please themselves, what happens to them? He says in verse 19, those who are envious, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of lice. Kshipram yajasham ashubam, keep on putting them in the ashubha, in the inauspicious births, ausuri veva yonishu, into various demoniac species of lives. And so, this is the punishment they receive for carrying out materialistic desires. And then finally, attaining repeated births among the demoniac species of life, O son of Kunti, such a person can never approach me. Gradually, they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. Although Lord is always merciful, he's not merciful to the demoniac. And for the reason that the demoniac are engaging in sense gratification at the expense of someone else's. They are thinking, how can I be happy? And how can I make sure that he is not happy? How can I be happy? I can be happy even more when I see that he is distressed or she is upset. This is how they think. The Lord, of course, knows, whether it's knowing or unknowing, the Lord knows. Whether they're knowingly carrying out this activity, then it's a different thing. That's a problem. Whereas unknowing, then it's a completely different situation. They didn't mean to cause the problem. But the Lord will then carry out this punishment. The punishment has to happen there. Krishna factors all. He's Bhava Grahi Janardana. He takes the emotion in the heart. So he knows what's happening, and therefore he puts them in this most abominable condition for carrying out all these activities, because that punishment needs to be there. One cannot simply carry out all these nonsensical activities. And then finally, now we come to the final stage, which is the escaping to the supreme destination. Verse 21, this is a very important verse. Please note down this verse. Trividam narakasyedam dvaram nashana atmana kama krodha tata lobhas tasmate tatrayam tyajet. Trividhim narakasyedam. There are 3 gates to hell. Dvaram nashana atmana. These are the 3 gates that one becomes destroyed by. 3. What are they? Kama, lust. Krodha, anger. And then lobha, greed. Lust, anger, and greed. Tasmate tatrayam tyajet. Anyone who is wise should give these up, because they lead to the degradation of the soul. Anyone with any religious practice or any spiritual understanding will know that lust, also aka sense gratification, atmendriya priti vamsha dhare balikama, those things we do to please ourselves and our sense gratification, our senses rather than ourselves, our senses, dhare balikama, this is called kama, this is called lust. Krishnendriya priti vamsha dhare premanama. But when we do that for the sake of the Lord, that is called love. And so this lust in particular is the worst, because lust leads to greed, which leads to anger. And this causes so many problems. So when one is able to control the lusty desires, then one is able to make real advancement. So one should forsake lust, anger, and greed where possible. They should always introspect and try and avoid these qualities, because this is the worst. These will take us down only, like a downward spiral, which will only cause further problems. And so the real intelligent person should try and take up try and reduce these, so that they realize that there is otherwise no possibility of liberation. Then finally, verse 22, the man who has escaped these 3 gates of hell perform acts conducive to self-realization. Acharyati atmana shreyas. And thus they gradually attain the supreme destination. Tato yati param gatim. If we look in the 20th verse, when he's describing the demoniac qualities, he says, Tato yanti adamam gatim. They go downwards. They go to the lower species. They go to the lowest destination. Whereas those who forsake these qualities, these demoniac qualities, and take to the spiritual qualities, Tato yati paramam gatim, or param gatim, sorry. They go upwards to the higher destination, to the more perfect destination. So this is one of the techniques Lord Krishna uses. He says, if you don't want this, then don't do this. And if you want this, then do this. He's always showing the contrast between the two. And so, the whole method of Krishna consciousness is based off stopping these lust, anger, and greed. Because lust causes so many desires, materialistic desires, which we will try and fulfill, which only causes further entanglement. Lust causes anger and greed when we're unable to get the things we want, and therefore it causes more problems. Lust in the form of sex desire also causes further degradation, because we become so attached to carrying out these activities that our mind is able to focus on them, not knowing what is right and what is wrong. And so that should be given up. Very important. And any spiritual path will tell. No matter which religion, where you go, a church or a mosque, lust is always condemned, because it's the worst quality and it's the root of all the problems we have. So this lusty desires should always be given up. Practically speaking, whatever is possible we should do to remove the lusty desires. By Krishna consciousness, the process of Krishna consciousness and Bhakti Yoga, one is able to do that simply by devotional service. But any practice removes these 3. These 3 are the worst things to have. So we should always try and stay away from them where possible. And then finally, we come to the conclusion of this chapter, the importance of the Vedic injunctions, the scriptural injunctions, and how we should carry out our activities. 23 and 24. Yashastra vidim utsrajya vartate kamakarata nasa siddhim na vapnoti nasukam paramam gatim. He who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. So one who carries out demoniac activities, they only degrade themselves. The one who carries out whatever they want, not following what Shastra says. This is what they do to themselves. And so therefore we should follow that. So that means lust should be given up, basically. Lust, really, really, really important, lust should be given up. And so, then what should we do if we shouldn't reject? Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya vyavastita jnatva shastra vidhanoktam karma kartum miharhasi. One should therefore try to understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may gradually be elevated. So by carrying out the scriptural activities, one is able to make advancement, one is able to make progress, one is able to become more elevated by carrying out what's in the scriptures. And so what is the essence of all scriptures? Anyone remember from last time? And they may remember 15th verse from the 15th chapter. Vedaishcha sarvaira hameva vedya. Of all Vedas, I am to be known, Lord Krishna says. So the essence of all religion, as we've said, is to know God and to love him. And that is done through the beautiful process of devotional service. Devotional service has 9 various limbs, which Prahlad Maharaj describes. But more importantly, the essence of all religion has been given by the Lord himself, who is incarnated in this age of Kali. Now, I was listening to one devotee speak, and he said that Lord Krishna says, I send those demoniac people to the lower species of life. That's what Lord Krishna says, right? But the Lord is so merciful, as we mentioned earlier. In fact, he's so merciful, he breaks his own rule. And so the Lord, as Lord Sri Hari, has appeared again in this age of Kali as Sri Gaura Chandra, Sri Gaura Sundara, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in that mood of Radharani, he has given the love of Godhead to everyone, including those most fallen people. In fact, Narottam Das Thakur prays that because I am more fallen, please give me first, I am so fallen. What is the nature of the Lord is that he's so merciful that even this rule he breaks. And he gives them the essence of all Shastra. He gives, what is the essence? What that thing that is directly imported from Goloka Vrindavan, Golokera Premadana, Harinama Sankirtana. By chanting the holy name. Now we look in Kali Yuga, we see all these lust, anger, and greed is everywhere prevalent. But this lust can be transformed into love. This anger can be reduced by Krishna consciousness, and greed can be nullified and transformed into greed for the Lord. You want to serve the Lord more. The greed for service. And how can that be done? That is through the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One may not understand how this works, but actually Parikshit Maharaj says, no, not Parikshit Maharaj, sorry, Shukadev Goswami says, Kirtana Deva Kalil Dhoshani De Rajan Hasti Eko Mahanguna. Hasti Eko Mahanguna. It's got one good quality there. Although it's an ocean of faults, Kali Yuga, it's got one good quality, and that is Kirtana Deva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Parambrita. One is able to reach, one is able to become liberated simply by the Lord's holy names. And the reason for this, when one understands it, whether we understand or we don't understand the natural process of devotional service and associating with devotees, it itself will naturally purify us. But the reason for this is because simply when we are loving the Lord, then that brings about a change in heart. When we carry out loving activities, that makes the heart softer and stronger at the same time. And that chanting of the holy names, whether it's done by means of japa, whether it's done by the means of kirtan, whether it's done by means of sankirtan, they will all naturally provide happiness. Because one of the things about music, everyone knows, music is a very nice way of expressing the emotion. And so for the Kali Yuga, we are not as great and advanced so we can carry out various other practices so easily. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given the essence of all Shastra. Tasmat Shastram Pramanam Te. So by using the Shastra, what should we do? We should carry out devotional service. And in particular, the singing and chanting of the glories of the Lord. So with that, we'll conclude with the singing and chanting of the glories of the Lord. Can you get the mridanga? I'd like to mention actually one point firstly. So we can actually transform, if we have a demoniac nature, it can be transformed to the divine nature. Divine isn't the end and means, because it's to an extent, mode of goodness itself isn't the end. But the good thing about having divine qualities is they naturally uplift us to go from divine to devotional. So demoniac to divine to devotional. And that is done through devotional service as well. Devotion as the means and the goal. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. And so the summary of this chapter is simply those divine qualities are described in the first 3 verses. Those are the qualities we should try and develop within ourselves. Those are the demoniac qualities which are mentioned in the other verses. These are the qualities which we should try and avoid. The divine qualities lead to liberation. The demoniac qualities lead to degradation and further bondage in the material world. And those who are demoniac, they will manipulate, they will do anything for their own sense gratification. They will say the world is fake. They will say there is no purpose, there is no Lord, there is no reason to live. Everything is there simply for my enjoyment. And to fulfill their desires, they put forward their philosophical theories and accumulate money by illegal manners. And then after doing so, they become so great. They become so proud of how great they are and how amazing they are, how opulent they are. And they utilize that to then carry out further activities. And what happens to those people in reality is that they get punished by the Lord, but the Lord is now coming in the age of Kali to save them. And after being punished, one should realize that these are the 3 gates to hell: the lust, anger, and greed. These are the 3 things that lead us to degradation. Anyone with any spiritual understanding should reject these. And finally, we should take to the instructions of Scripture, and we should carry out them in this regard. Now, one question that may arise is, what if one is being a good person, but they aren't following Scripture? And that is the question that Arjun asks, which leads to the 17th chapter. So you're going to have to wait till next month for that one. But the ultimate essence of this is that if we want to move from demoniac to divine to then devotional, we have to take devotional service. And so the essence is, with devotees, in association with devotees, we'll naturally be able to develop these qualities, and we'll make further advancement in that manner.
No, I have a comment.
Yeah, go for it.
So it's artificially to say that overcome the lust, anger, greed is very hard. But if one knows that Lord is the proprietor of everything, everything belongs to Lord, including the body and our senses. So all things are utilized for His service. Then there is no question of lust.
Yeah. A comment from the audience, real life audience. That if we, simply saying renouncing lust, anger, and greed is very difficult, but actually, if we understand the Lord is the proprietor and the maintainer of all things, like in the Isha Upanishad, we talk about that a lot. The demoniac people, they don't recognize this principle. In verses 4 and 5, we talk about how inconceivable the Lord is. But in verses 2 and 3, we talk about the demoniac people, they don't understand this. They describe the maha. They're the killer of the self because they are reducing and wasting this human form of life. But if we understand the Lord as the proprietor, the Lord is the maintainer, then we will naturally be able to give up the lust, anger, and greed, because what are we being greedy for? It's not our possession, and we will not maintain in the end. And so simply by understanding and cultivating this knowledge of devotional service and practicing it as well, knowledge is great, but realization is more important. And when we realize and understand and apply this in our day-to-day life, we'll be able to make more advancement. So without further ado, I will end the class today. Thank you so much for those who have joined. 17th chapter is also a very nice chapter. These chapters, the whole string of chapters are very practical. And the 17th chapter deals with the divisions of faith. And it starts off with that question that Arjun puts forward. And so we'll see you on the first Sunday in August. Thank you, everyone, for the blessings that you're giving and providing. And prasadam will be served in your own home. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.